Well, they show his teeth and tongue.
which is it's funny because you really don't need to do a lot in horror at this point as a horror writer at all. All you have to do is just film somebody going to like an endodontic specialist and getting a root canal, and that's plenty horrific.
Yeah, that gets me.
Well, the problem is that I love the movie and I enjoyed watching it, but I watched it. My rewatches were before and then after a root canal. So the fact that the movie begins with teeth and there's so many shots because they're not doll teeth. They're like person teeth.
Yeah, it looks very human. The tongue is an odd choice for this doll.
Yeah. Well, it's like even like the teeth and maybe it's supposed to be burned, but like the teeth are like a little yellow. And so it's very real.
Well, and they've got like those dentistry like hooks and stuff that are like scraping stuff out from between them.
So the question is, why does a good guy doll need such realistic fucking teeth? I went to that endodontic specialist knowing you know how you don't want to spoil stuff for yourself? Like you go to a movie and you're like, no, I don't want to know what this character's name is in this Marvel movie because maybe I know that character and it'll spoil it for me. I am normally like that with procedures. I've gotten back surgeries. I've gotten things where I am dreading it and I specifically don't look up what's going to happen because I don't want to look that up and then have to process that those things are about to be done to me.
Absolutely not.
Well, I broke that rule with a root canal because I thought a root canal is not that bad. I know people that have like gotten a root canal on their lunch break and like have just gone back to work. So I looked it up. It's horrific. What they have to do is gross. It's not invasive. It's not super like it's not physically horrible, but it's just the idea that very, very basically your teeth have those two roots that go down into your jaw and they have to drill those roots hollow, scrape out all of the nerve tissue from inside of your tooth, replace that with metal rods that they shape to the size of the inside of those canals.
Metal.
And then fill it with gunk to seal it shut and then put a cap on your tooth. Yeah, so I know all this is going to happen, but still, it's like the way like they hook your mouth open and then they put like, there's no better way to say it. They put like a dental dam over your tooth so that it's just the tooth separated and none of the pieces that come off or are shaved off, none of the tooth powder goes into your mouth. And it's like the sounds of like whirring drills and like it's like every so often there would be like a noise and it's like the dentist is like no that's normal, don't worry about that. And I was like, what's normal about that? I don't want you clicking in my teeth. I don't want that happening. That's gross. I don't like that. And then the smell of like tooth powder and then like the next day I'm in so much fucking pain. And I'm like, but why am I in pain? And it's like, yeah, because they had to like smash shit into my jaw for an hour. All you need to do to make a convincing horror movie horrific is just every so often, you know, like Insidious, right? He goes into the further and he's walking around and it's like ghosts and whatever. And then they just cut to like somebody doing like shaving a tooth down for a cap. And it's just in the mouth and like the tooth is being shaved. That's horrific. Truly, truly terrifying. Hello, all you good guys and gals, and welcome to the Third Channel Podcast,
where we delve into the horror franchises you love from the perspectives of a lifelong horror fan.
And a newbie to the genre. Hi, I'm PJ.
And I'm Derek.
Today, the only thing we're here to talk about is horror. Today's horror comes in the variety, the flavor of Child's Play 2, which originally I didn't really care for in our watch of these. You got to remember the first Chucky movie that I saw was The Bride of Chucky, which eventually, you know, obviously we'll get to, and is much crazier than this. So this kind of being a more serious tone, even as goofy as it is, it's still a more serious tone, was, to me at the time at least, forgettable. But I got to be honest with you, watching this week, I really like this movie.
Yeah, I put it right up there with one.
It is a lot of fun. It is a lot of really good puppet work for the time. It's just good effects. Brad Dourif, great as ever, sexy as hell. They don't actually show Brad Dourif. He's just a voice in this. Still sexy as hell. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed this movie. Do we have any, before we launch into it, do you have any keeping of homes that you would like to participate in?
I mean, the only like kind of housekeepy sort of things is if I didn't say it enough or stress it enough or bring it up at all in the last discussion of Child's Play, this is a franchise that I did not watch as a kid. This is one that I didn't watch until, obviously, you know who Chucky is. I think my first interaction or time that I saw Chucky was probably at a Spencer's Gifts.
Yeah, that sounds right.
In the 90s, they had done these, I don't know what company it was, but they had done like life-size Chucky and Tiffany dolls from Bride of Chucky, and which would have been coming out around that time. And so, that's what I remember is them up on the top shelf in a Spencer's Gift, and then not seeing the movie until I think 2016, October, watching 31 horror movies over the course of the month. And I watched Child's Play 1, 2, and 3 in quick succession there, but then didn't get around to the rest of them until like last year.
Yeah. Well, and what I find strange about this is that a lot of people seem to come to it late. He kind of blossomed later on in the franchise's history.
Yeah.
So, because it's, I basically have the same story. It would be like, not ever having read a Calvin and Hobbes. And then you finally read Calvin and Hobbes and you're like, oh, he's just like an innocent little kid with an imagination who's like smarter than your average kid. So it's like kind of quirky and funny. He's not just pissing on stuff all the time.
Right.
Because I know Calvin and Hobbes from bumper stickers where he's just pissing all over America.
Right.
But
anyone's opinion that's different than yours.
Now the only person who's pissing on America is Elon Musk.
Yeah.
You can cut that if you want. Or you can leave it.
I am going to leave it.
That's good. It is the opinion of the Third Channel podcast that fuck Elon Musk. Okay.
Yes.
His real name, by the way, this isn't my joke, but it is a funny one that I love. His whole full name is Elongated Muskrat. Okay. So, yeah, my experience with Chucky was very similar, wherein I experienced him through, he was kind of like the ICP kid horror monster, like, because he said like bad words, and he was like, at that point, when I'm in like middle school, even Bride of Chucky has come out.
Yeah.
So like he's kind of famous for like raunchiness and whatnot. So to find out that wasn't the origin of the character, that it was intended to be a literal horror, slasher, was surprising to me. But I'm not disappointed. I love what they do with him. This is the perfect example of a horror sequel, because the first movie is filled with, and we talked about this with Alistair last week, where it's filled with like weird choices for exposition.
Yeah.
This movie doesn't, and you and I talked about this watching it through last night. This movie doesn't have to fuck with any of that.
Nope.
So it is bare bones. It is funny. A lot of the kills in this movie are quite creative.
Yeah.
They play with like an atmosphere of like a giant FAO Schwartz, like a giant toy factory. They play with the bright colors and the yes, it's a factory, and yes, it makes toys, but it's still like big blocky structures with high pop colors and stuff. So the whole movie is visually entertaining. I like this one a lot. Yeah. I'm surprised by how much I liked it.
And all that visual, I mean, that is a choice by the director to make it look a very specific way. I think the toy factory in the initial, like whenever they were kind of sketching it out and things, it was a lot darker. and he wanted it to be more bright, like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
I was gonna say the Good Guys Factory is very much the candy forest of that film.
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting about this movie specifically is that my other first time kind of seeing this, a scene from this film is at FYE.
Okay.
If you remember that store. They had disappeared for a while. I think they went out of business, and then they've started popping back up in malls. I've seen them recently.
What's funny is that they've popped up in malls and now are starting to disappear again.
Oh, yeah?
There was, so in a mall near where we live in like a little sub-city called Brandon, there was a FYE that was there for the longest time. That was the first FYE I ever went to. And then it closed, it shuttered. And then there was a new one. And it just closed again. And I was like, man, I'm reliving the past.
Yeah, they just keep trying different, ways into this kind of industry of entertainment, like selling physical media. But so I believe it was at an FYE originally. I had purchased this. It was a VHS originally.
Okay.
And I have since then bought, in the years following, a DVD version of this.
So the FYE sold VHS?
Way back when.
Amazing.
Yeah. Because I used to buy, like, I believe it was from there. Maybe it came from a Walmart initially, but either way, I had this on VHS. I probably still have the VHS lying around somewhere in my collection, but I have upgraded to a DVD at some point, and it's this little compilation called Boogeymen, the Killer Compilation.
Okay.
And the tagline for it is the scariest boogeymen ever to appear on film, together for the first time in the ultimate horror experience.
What?
It is this little, it's literally a compilation of all these different scenes from horror movies, from all these slasher flicks. And so it's the first place that I saw, I think it's the opening scene of Pinhead, of Hellraiser rather. And, but you have a scene from Nightmare on Elm Street. You have a scene from one of the Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
I think it's Jason Goes to Hell.
I will very quickly rattle them off. You have Pinhead, Freddy Krueger, Leatherface, Ghostface, Chucky, Candyman, Leprechaun, Simon from a character called Simon from the movie called The Ugly, Wishmaster from Wishmaster, Camilla from Guardian, the Fisherman from I Know What You Did Last Summer, the Dentist from The Dentist, the Tall Man from Phantasm, Blade, not Wesley Snipes, but from the movie The Puppet Master, Norman Bates, Jason Voorhees, and Michael Myers.
Which Halloween?
Halloween.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just know for some of them they pulled from weird places, because for Chucky they pulled from Child's Play 2.
Yeah, I see that.
And it is the scene in the classroom with Miss Kettlewell.
That's amazing.
So I had seen.
By the way, Miss Kettlewell, pin in that.
So I had watched that scene from this compilation years. I mean, a decade before I actually saw the movie.
That scene, and we'll get to it, but that scene is an excellent example of the kind of puppetry in this movie that sets it apart, because it's fantastic. I love that sequence. What's funny is that the IMDb video, the trailer, the thumbnail of the trailer is Chucky in the scene where he is beating that teacher to death with a measuring stick. The synopsis is pretty good, I feel.
Cool.
While Andy's mother is admitted to a psychiatric hospital, the young boy is placed in foster care, and Chucky, determined to claim Andy's soul, isn't far behind.
Okay, yeah.
Pretty good.
That's a good tease.
I love so much that, and we will talk about this as these movies go on, but I think as a part of Chucky, specifically Child's Play and Chucky housekeeping, I think it's important to note, none of the details of the series get left in the garbage. Everything matters. Everything is important. No matter how far into the franchise you go, every little detail follows along. And I love that you see the examples of that even in this one, where he still has to get to Andy because Andy is the first person he has been revealed to.
Right.
And is that a dumb detail from the first one? Yeah. If it were a different franchise, would they have probably given it a different reason by now? Probably. But this, like Dom Mancini and the people that create these films, just no, this is what we said. This is what the story is. We're going to stick to it. And what's funny is that by the time you get to the TV show, which again, fans of the Third Channel podcast, we're so sorry. We're sorry for two reasons. We're sorry, number one, because we're not going to go over the TV show. We're a film podcast. So we can't go over the TV show because if we do, they, being TV in general, will sue us. That's what happens when you make a podcast. You have to pick one or the other. And if you don't, if you stray into the one that you didn't pick, they sue you. Mm-hmm. They, of course, being movies and or TV. The other thing that we're sorry about is that we're still not sponsored by Tubi. And frankly, it's because you, our fans, aren't fucking working hard enough. Work harder.
Yeah. Alistair laid out that incredible pitch of a commercial last week.
Yeah. Tune out the world. Tune in to Tubi.
That's great.
I wrote that down in a fever dream. Mm-hmm. I woke up and I went, I need a pen. And Carly was like, get away from me, you strange man. Because I was wearing another man's skin. But the point is that we need as much support in our campaign to be sponsored by Tubi. Again, for no money, Tubi. Whoever you are, whoever runs Tubi. Jonathan Tubi. Jonathan Tuberman.
Probably.
Mr. Tuberman, please sponsor us.
Child's Play 2, released November 9th of 1990.
It was a good year.
Which means I was alive for this one.
I wasn't. Not yet.
Didn't see it, though, in theaters because I would have been 1 month old.
I was about to say, at the very least, months old.
Yeah. But what's funny is it is released 2 years, actually, I think it's 2 years to the day from Child's Play.
Okay.
So, this time directed by John Lafia or Lafia. Haven't looked that up. Probably mispronouncing it one way or the other. But if you remember, that was the second writer brought in for Child's Play.
Right.
So he's now the director. Mm-hmm. Written by Don Mancini. Mm-hmm. Just the single writer this time. Producer David Kirshner's back. Those two names are the ones that are going to be attached to all of these things.
Yeah.
Our cinematographer here, Steven Zapsky. He worked on Vampire's Kiss, which is like a vampire black comedy with Nick Cage. He worked with Tim Burton on Edward Scissorhands, Batman Returns, and Ed Wood. And he also did cinematography for Matilda.
I see a lot of that in this. I see a lot of that kind of like grim, kind of spooky yet whimsicalness to this. I see
it's all shot from a child's point of view.
Yeah,
of the world. A lot of low angles, a lot of kind of wide angle lenses. But yeah, very purposefully chosen for that.
Yeah, you can tell every shot was shot with sticky fingers.
Yeah, that's definitely what I meant. And then it's edited by Edward Warshilka, who was one of the editors on Child's Play. But again, just to rattle off a couple, 16 Candles, Howard the Duck, Rambo 3, and the first 3 Child's Play films he is the editor on.
Okay.
Our budget for Child's Play 2 is around the same amount as Child's Play.
I wish I remembered.
That was where I was getting at.
Okay. Can you tell me what it was for the first Child's Play?
According to Don Mancini, I believe, in the commentary,
right,
he said that they landed around $16 million
for the first one. Second one, I'm going to bump that up too. I'm going to go 18 million.
No, it is 13 million.
Okay,
which is what the estimated. It was between 9 and 13 for what it showed online.
Well, I get the budgets wrong. You get the names of the people involved presumably wrong.
Yeah.
So it's wrong all the way around.
Yeah. No one should be listening to us for any sort of knowledge or insight into anything.
All they listen to us for are glowing reviews of Tubi.
Yes. And then this movie made just shy of $36 million at the box office.
Which is funny because that's not an awful lot of money to be made, especially for a horror movie and especially in the 90s. Granted, very beginning of the 90s, but you know what I mean. It's not a lot, but that seems to be this series' MO, is that it's not wide reaching, but everyone knows who Chucky is. Yeah. Everybody. And to that point, a small tangent, and now we don't play Magic the Gathering. That's been established on this show.
Right. We definitely don't.
We are not those kinds of people. We have many friends. We are successful at social gatherings. We do, but not Magic the Gathering. Right. Anyway, they did a special card printing. So there are 5 Magic cards that are Chucky. They are either Chucky or there's Tiffany or whatever. But I remember the announcement and reading through a post about the announcement, and people were like, why the fuck would they choose Chucky? Mm-hmm. Like, I've never even seen these fucking movies. And it's like, yeah, but you know who that is.
Yeah.
You know who Chucky is. It's popular enough to get the card. And then the reaction is, well, we've never seen these movies. And that's just, it's so strange. It is both the zeitgeist and also it doesn't quite fit into there. So it's strange.
Yeah, no, he is one of those characters where it doesn't matter if you've seen the movies or not, you know who he is.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think a lot of the slasher icons that we think of are that way. They're identifiable by people who haven't seen the movies because of, you know, their mask or the weapon they use, or, you know, in the case of Chucky, it's like that he is a doll.
What's funny is that as the newbie of the newbie and schmoobie, mm-hmm. as somebody who really wasn't around this stuff very much, not really, not from my perspective, at mm-hmm. least. I know who Chucky is. And like, I know who Freddy is because Freddy Krueger is a super specific name.
Yeah.
But like, I didn't know that Jason was from Friday the 13th. I know that the hockey mask is Jason.
Right.
And I know that the white mask is Michael, but I don't know that Michael is the killer in Halloween.
Okay.
I didn't know anything about fucking Ghostface. I had no idea. I know Leatherface is Texas Chainsaw, but that's because his mask is made of people and that's unnerving. And so that one kind of catches your attention. Mm-hmm. But it's like, I didn't know that the Chucky movies were called Child's Play. No idea. Yeah. But I did know that that's fucking Chucky. I know that there are movies of his that have his name in it. Mm-hmm. And I have an idea of who he is. He's the little killer doll. And everybody, it's like you're born with an innate sense of how to swim. You know, they throw babies in the pool and they swim around and then they go, Chucky is the killer doll, because everyone's born with those things.
Yeah.
Those are instincts.
Yeah. It's funny that like Freddy and Chucky are the ones that you kind of at least just like through osmosis knew of, because mm-hmm. those are the two with the personalities.
With the big personalities, yeah. It's the others really have no personality. I believe that we project ourselves onto them. I mean, Ghostface has a bit of a personality, but right. Ghostface is several personalities. To find out who those personalities belong to, listen to our Scream episodes.
That's good.
Thank you. But yeah, no, I knew who Chucky was right out of the gate. It was never something that needed any research.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's good. Okay. So director John Lafia, other than directing this, he was the writer on Child's Play. He wrote and directed a movie called The Blue Iguana. He had directed a couple episodes for Freddy's Nightmares, which was mm-hmm. the like TV anthology show that followed the Freddy Krueger movies. Like he was in them, but kind of as like a Rod Serling to the Twilight Zone, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think Freddy featured in the episode stories themselves all that often, mm-hmm. but he just kind of introduced and did little bits, kind of like the Crypt Keeper.
This one's a good one, bitch.
John Lafia also, he directed a movie called Man's Best Friend, which I believe is about Rottweilers that go crazy and kill people.
Nice.
He did a couple episodes on Babylon 5. He directed an episode of The Dead Zone, and he did this TV movie that I don't believe I've ever seen, but I remember the cover for it in like video stores growing up, because it's from 2002. It's called The Rats. And it is just a very specific cover that it is burned into my memory.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Ew. Because it's got like the teeth don't fit in the rat's mouth. Guys, Google The Rats movie.
Yeah.
That's a weird image.
That one's burned into my head. And then there's another one called Bats. And the movie, or like the title of Bats on the cover is upside down, so it says stab instead.
That's bizarre.
So yeah.
And then as you grow older, because there's been the Rats and Bats, and then eventually the scariest of that trilogy came out, and that was the Cats movie.
Yeah,
because that's terrifying.
I loved that. That little
the
walk.
joke or the movie?
No, that walk you took us on.
Okay, because I was going to say, if you liked the movie, you were the only one.
No, I didn't like
Dame Judi Dench.
Yeah, I didn't like the movie. I did see it in theaters.
Of course you did.
And it was an experience.
A bad one.
Yeah. Our writer and our producer are Don Mancini and David Kirshner. They pretty much work on, their names are on all the Child's Plays, The Brides, The Seeds, The Curses, The Cults, and the Chucky series. David Kirshner, if you remember, he also created American Tail and American Tail 5 Goes West.
Amen.
Producer on Hocus Pocus 1 and 2, and a bunch of other things from our childhood. So when it comes to the production of this film, United Artists, which was the production company that made the first one, whenever they purchased the script for the original Child's Play, they partially did it because they believed that it had the potential for multiple sequels.
Okay.
Because obviously it's at this point, that's what, 88. They bought it probably in 86, I think is when the writing process had been happening for that. So like the Friday the 13th movies are well into all of them. You've got but the last couple of your Nightmare on Elm Street movies. You've had like a string of these like successful, Halloweens, all these successful slashers. So they were like, okay, we're going to get this, Killer Doll movie. We're going to get a bunch of sequels on it. David Kirshner had asked Tom Holland to return as director, but Holland declined. He had conflicts with producer David Kirshner and United Artists on the first film. We kind of talked about that last week. And then so John Lafia, who had been turned down as the director, having no experience directing whenever they went to do the first film, he was hired by Kirshner after he saw his work with The Blue Iguana. Mancini also agreed to return, and they then worked together. They set the film at a foster home due to Lafia's experience living in a large family.
Okay.
Growing up from there. So that came from a little bit of experience.
That's strange that you would pull from, we're going to do a foster home because I lived with I have a bunch of siblings. We have a big family. But then the foster home that you set the movie in, eventually Andy gets fostered with two parents and one other kid.
Yeah.
So
and you barely get any time of them in like the big foster, like the group home.
Right.
So other than that one scene where you see all the kids evacuate
weird.
It is. It's kind of bizarre, but that's kind of where it started from. So unlike in the original film, Don Mancini, he's the only writer on this one, like I said, but that's because he wanted to take kind of control of this. He had felt that the character of Chucky hadn't been developed to its fullest in that first film, and he really wanted to kind of play with the personality there. And so he reused a lot of his own ideas from the original film, the classroom, the factory sequences, but he kept in the voodoo mythology that had been established in the original, even though Mancini and Kirshner weren't like big fans of that. That was like an idea put in by Tom Holland, but they kept it anyway and just kept moving with that. They started pre-production, and they had been set to begin filming in October of 1989. But that's when United Artists president basically told Kirshner that they had to put the film on hold because the studio was about to be acquired by an Australian group called Kintex, I believe is how you pronounce it.
Okay.
And they did not want to produce any horror films, that new company. And so that's then started like a bidding war with all the major studios out there. And Disney was actually a big they really wanted the Child's Play series because they had been working with Kirshner to develop Hocus Pocus. So they already had him kind of, working under the fold.
Right.
And so they were interested to then put Child's Play under their Touchstone Pictures label.
Okay.
Which allowed them to do kind of more adult stuff. But it's because they wanted to be able to create like a horror themed experience at their new park MGM Studios at the time.
God damn it. That would have been so fucking cool. And then they would have replaced it with Guardians of the fucking Galaxy or some shit.
Eventually, yeah. Eventually it all goes to Guardians.
Yeah. I would have rioted. No, I'm kidding. It probably would have sucked. It wouldn't have sucked, but it would have been really dated.
Well, yes. But the thing that then happens is that Universal wins the bidding war.
Good.
After Steven Spielberg and Kathleen Kennedy, they had assisted in convincing Kirshner to accept Universal's deal because of like basically a negative pickup deal with the studio. A negative pickup deal, I think he takes a cut of his salary off the top. Like he doesn't make as much off the top end, but then he makes it on the back end with how good the film does in theaters.
Okay.
So he goes with Universal. But what I'm saying is like, yes, we don't get the Disney thing, but then we get Universal so that Chucky is then used at like Halloween Horror Nights
Yes.
a whole bunch in the future.
And this is just an aside, but as we continue to talk about Child's Play, Chucky is such a person. Chucky is very much a Freddy, a Beetlejuice, this character has a lot of personality, and it comes from kind of that like 80s sensibility of like raunchiness and whatever that those characters really inhabit, especially towards the end of those Nightmare movies. Freddy's just a fucking cartoon. But I would love to see there were stirrings right at the beginning of COVID when they canceled Horror Nights for the first time, and it got pushed that year. But there were stirrings because that next year, which was the 30th anniversary, Jack the Clown was the host because it was the big anniversary year. But there were stirrings, from what I've heard, that the year prior, which was originally going to have the Beetlejuice house, Beetlejuice was sort of like the mascot, was like the host of the event, which is cool. And they from my knowledge, they haven't done that. They haven't taken an established character and made them like given them a show or given them like walking in the lanes or being like the mascot of the event.
So the closest that they come to that is in the early years. There was a couple years where the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
He was kind of before like Jack, the first icon from Halloween Horror Nights, was ever established.
Right.
So like the Crypt Keeper was kind of the host, if you will, and he would ride in the parade because it was a couple years where they actually did a parade at Halloween Horror Nights.
Which is pretty cool. You could never do that now.
No, there's too many people.
Yeah, too many people, but also with the 10 houses, there's no room.
Yeah.
All the backlot is gone. There's no room.
But yeah, that's about as close as we've come. In the very early days, they also used to have like horror icons that they would have walk around in the park anyway. So Beetlejuice, the Munsters, things like that. They would still be milling around and doing kind of meet and greets during the event.
What I'd like to see now is I'd like to see them pluck the eyes right back out of the Crypt Keeper. Put them into Chucky. And I'd love to see the event actually like hosted by Chucky. It'd be great. He's got that thing that allows people to kind of gather and like love him, which again, and we'll probably get into this more later on, but like even the house that was about him and his movies, even if it kind of sucked, we kind of thought it sucked. It's still good references. It's still fun.
Yeah.
So
I feel like he kind of had that a little bit during a couple years prior to that. He had a scare zone. And so they had that kind of puppet animatronic in the middle of the scare zone. And he would interact with people live. So that was kind of similar. And then
they just hid Brad Dourif in like a barrel underneath him.
Because they were like, we're not making any more Lord of the Rings movies. So
like, we're not. but how am I supposed to be Worm Tongue? Not to be confused with Harry Potter.
Yeah, that's very confusing. Kirshner was busy. He had been hired to run Hanna-Barbera at the time.
What the fuck?
He has a very interesting career.
Yeah.
And so the production on this film was supervised more by Robert Lathan Brown. And so Kirshner I don't believe was on set as much for this one. Unlike the first film, which was shot mostly like on location in Chicago, this one is shot mostly on the Universal Studios like backlot in Universal City in California. And the Play Pals factory, which is like the whole last set piece of the movie, that was shot in an abandoned warehouse in Valencia, California. Unlike the first film where, like you had said, Brad Dourif doesn't appear like as himself or as, Charles Lee Ray in this one.
Well, and even in the first one, Charles Lee Ray is in the movie for like the first 5 minutes, maybe. But yeah, no, not in this one at all. He is just a voice. And
because of that, like he recorded all of his dialogue as Chucky in advance. So that was different than last time, because last time it was like they tried a different voice and then brought him back and did that whole thing. But this time they recorded it in advance, and that actually allowed them to match up the lips of the puppets much more closely to how he spoke his lines, which you definitely like see that. Ed Gale, who was one of the little people who like acted as Chucky in certain scenes in the first film, he also played the body of Chucky in some of the scenes in this one. I don't notice it as much in this film.
No, not nearly as often. I think only one point did I catch it, and I pointed that out to you. But outside of that, yeah, no, it's almost indistinguishable. I think they just know how to move the camera in certain ways to kind of hide the realism.
Yeah. And I think, I honestly, I think a lot of his scenes were probably either not used or trimmed out. Just, I guess maybe they didn't need them. Kevin Yeager, he returns to do the special effects and the puppetry, directing a lot of the scenes that were very puppet heavy. That's what happens a lot of times with special effects artists or stunt coordinators. They end up directing a lot of like second unit or third unit. You'll see that in the credits a lot of times. Like, and that's what that means, is like kind of pickup shots, or like, hey, this doesn't have the main actors in it. Go shoot this other stuff. And that's kind of how like directors kind of cut their teeth before getting handed their own, movie to work with. Originally, the film was intended to open with a courtroom scene with the jury sentencing Karen Barclay to a mental institution for backing Andy's story and insisting that Chucky was alive. Catherine Hicks and Chris Sarandon were intended to reprise their roles as Karen and Detective Mike Norris. Sarandon has talked in interviews saying that he had declined to return whenever they asked because Tom Holland would not be involved. But those scenes weren't ever shot. They were cut from the scripts anyway, just because budgetary constraints, and made the movie a lot shorter.
Yeah.
This is the shortest film. At this point in time, this is the shortest film in the Chucky franchise. But those courtroom scenes would kind of be recycled at the ending of Curse of Chucky. And it would have also contained a scene where Chucky's remains were then held in police evidence lockers alongside Jason Voorhees' mask and Michael Myers' masks, which is an idea that's kind of carried over into Bride of Chucky. So all these little things that like don't end up in these first two scripts get picked up later on.
And it's ideas that hit the cutting room floor, get picked back up and stitched back into something later, or little details, little throwaway lines, throwaway fucking characters get revived. It's very Ash versus the Evil Dead. It's very, oh no, this actress played this one role in this one background scene of this thing, so we're going to pick her up and put her in the show. And it's like, yeah, it's great. It's they just never let any of it die. And I love that.
Okay, honey, let's see your license. You're clocking 60 and a 45. What's your hurry?
I have a date.
You're gonna have to do better than that. Hey, that's one of those good guys, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I love these things. What's your name, buddy?
Chucky.
That's incredible.
I'll say.
What the hell's that?
You seen dolls that pee? This one bleeds.
Again, carrying over the theme of the longer Chucky is in the doll, the more the doll becomes human, which again makes no fucking sense.
Right.
Also, kind of the start of this movie, and it happens a lot in this film, but in the last film, and I mentioned this in our review, kind of poor Chucky, like the amount of crazy shit that happens to him as the doll. He gets tossed around, he gets smashed, he gets all these crazy fucking things. He gets set on fire at one point.
Limbs blown off.
Right. So it's like, and he's got like just random nosebleeds because his doll body is beginning to develop veins and like all of this horrific shit. But that's how this movie starts, is his body being, remember, it was a charred mass of headless nonsense. And they pick up the head, they clean off all of the soot and burnt and rubbers and plastics and assume like nylon hair. They scrape it all off. And again, it's very meticulous and human-like teeth.
Yeah.
And they put it on a new body. And per the like CEO of Good Guys, they put it on a new body and are going to turn it back on
Yeah.
and I'm not sure if it's like court ordered or if they're just trying to save face with the community.
I think it's more of that.
Yeah.
So the characters that are kind of there at the beginning, they work for Play Pals, which is the company that makes the good guy dolls. And so one is explaining to the other of like, you know, hey, everything that you said in the synopsis of like Andy's mother is in a mental institution because she agreed with Andy's story. She's crazy. Okay, get her out of the way immediately. But we've still got to get this doll, clean it up, put it back together, and make sure that it's not alive. Because we got to make sure that we got to show the people that it's a normal doll.
We have to prove that our dolls don't come to life and terrorize your average nuclear American family in Chicago. We have to prove that.
My favorite thing about this opening sequence, like the cleaning of it all, like you said, scraping all the like the skin off of it and everything, all the charred, everything. It's very much like the scene in Toy Story 2 where the old man has to fix Woody.
Yeah, which was, I think, the first example in my life of something that is very satisfying. It's like, it's so nice to watch.
Yeah.
And which is funny because in my notes, the first note that I have is Andy in Toy Story named Andy because of Andy Barclay and Child's Play. And then you mentioned that Disney was interested in purchasing Child's Play. And now I'm even more convinced.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have these moments a lot where I go, where the fuck do I know that guy from? And this was an actor. And you go, it's not the CEO, but it's like the right-hand man, the kind of Weasley dude.
Matson is his
character name. Yeah. And I'm like, where the fuck do I know this guy from? And you go, Talladega Nights. And I'm like, well, no, it's not Talladega Nights. It's got to be something different. And I go through his IMDb, every single entry I've never heard of, except for fucking Talladega Nights. So yeah, I know that guy as he's like the shitty manager of, or no, he's like it doesn't matter who he is in Talladega Nights.
I don't know who
Let's
he is.
move past it.
That Batson is played by Greg German. He's in this. He's in Talladega Nights. He's in a horror movie called Quarantine. And then he did long stints in the television series of Ally McBeal and Grey's Anatomy.
Neither of which I've seen.
No.
But I have seen Talladega Nights. And if you ain't first, you're in Child's Play too.
Yeah. Sullivan, who is his boss, is played by Peter Haskell. I believe he also appears in Child's Play 3, but we'll get to that next week. He was in I was kind of looking through his things that he was in, anything that's genre related. Closest I could figure is he was in The Phantom of Hollywood, which is a TV movie from 1974. He, a long time played in Search for Tomorrow, which was a soap opera. He's in Child's Play 2 and 3, and then he's in Robot Wars, which is a like sci-fi action film made by Charles Band. Charles Band is who did the Ghoulies movies and the Puppet Master movies, and so those are typically his.
So he's
brand.
just in movies about possessed children's toys.
Yeah, pretty much.
He is in this movie for all of 2 minutes.
Yeah,
and it's so easy to be that character actor because it's like, okay, so what's my role? And it's like, you have 6 lines. Basically, you belittle a guy and you make them do this stupid thing to this doll. And then when a man dies in front of you, you don't react. It's like, you barely care.
Yeah.
Like, all right, cool. First creative death is the lightning. And what's funny is that we've talked about before the fun facts that get thrown around so often that they're no longer fun. Maybe if not on the show, you and I have talked about that. And one of those fun facts is the Crypt Keeper's eyes are Chucky's eyes. And so in this moment, how it opens and the first death is related to putting the eyes into Chucky's head. I laughed my fucking ass off.
Well, and it's also this wonderful like setup to a very long toward the end of this movie payoff.
Yes. And I will say that, and I'll point it out, I think now, and then there's one more time in the movie, so I'll try to keep in mind what the second one is. But this is one of those magic cards. Is the art is the scene where Chucky is, I guess, emitting electricity from being evil.
Yeah, it's unclear as to what is exactly happening there, but there's a short circuit in this machine as it's installing his eyes.
That electrifies bigger-jawed Rick Moranis to death.
Right.
Right. And that comes at the end of a long, really brilliant credit sequence.
Yes.
Where he is just being rebuilt. And you don't have to waste time with, well, how did he come back? Somehow Palpatine came back. But instead it's just, oh no, they are building a doll and then they take the metal skull, which, yeah, good guy dolls, of course, have human teeth and metal skulls, baby teeth. But yeah, no, it's effective. It's great. And it ends with the dumbest fucking death. And it's great. It's a good effect. Old mid to late 80s, early 90s, those lightning effects usually look bad. This one doesn't look too bad.
No, and it's kind of mirrors the opening of Child's Play 1, where you have like the big lightning strike and the glass shattering and there's like kind of an explosion and somebody,
Well, and that's supposed to mirror Frankenstein. If anything, this mirrors it much more.
Yeah. A lot of things from Chucky, and then of course you get to Bride of Chucky, which is, you have Bride of Frankenstein. So it's a play on that.
Well, and what's funny is that when you look at the sequence objectively, they have the doll that they have manually assembled on this operating table. It's like a metal table, like a slab. Like, why would they have this here? Why would that exist? It's a toy factory. Why would they have a special like R&D room with like a two-way glass?
Yeah.
Like, why does that exist?
Even they because the boss is like trying to hurry them up, and the two workers are just like, we don't typically have to build these things by hand.
Right.
Like, bear with us here, guys.
But the thing that they like, well, we're flustered. We barely ever have to do this, is like they have to put arms into the body. And then they have to put like the skin mask over the head. And it's like, what do you mean? It's so easy.
Yeah. There doesn't seem to be much to it at all.
No, it's very much how many Etch-a-Sketches have you made? Like 30? And everyone in the North Pole is surprised that Buddy is bad at making toys. It's like, they're making Etch-a-Sketches. Those are probably hard to make. This doll feels like a Lego set with 5 steps.
Something that I guess Don Mancini really wanted to kind of get in the script, work into the script this time that didn't make it in last time, is more of the focus on the toy company and like kind of the marketing of they're going to be in trouble because this bad thing happened with one of their dolls. So how do we save face? After that scene, we then move to Andy is talking to like a child therapist.
And I get that these are important scenes, but I will find myself in a crowd of everyone who's probably ever seen this movie where all of the Andy scenes are like, shut up and go back to Chucky. Shut up. This kid Alex Vincent is not very good as a child actor. He's not bad, but there's nothing special. It's dry line delivery and kind of like dead eyes and just like, it's a child actor. You're either going to get an exceptional like Shirley Temple performance out of these kids, or it's going to just be, well, this kid's cute and we cast him and now we're stuck with him. Yeah,
because especially in the next couple of years after this one, you have like Macaulay Culkin, and you have
Jonathan Lipnicki,
you have Jonathan Taylor Thomas, you have
Frankie Muniz,
Matilda, Mara Wilson.
Yes.
So you just have like several like really good child actors,
all the Harry Potter
right
kids
there in the early 90s. That's about to happen.
And again, Alex Vincent stuck with this franchise. It may be a situation where this is really the thing he's got going on, but regardless, he sticks with it. He's much better later on. He's we'll get to those final 2 movies that he has a part in, and he's great in them. But in this movie, it is very much like, okay, yes, Andy is speaking to a child therapist because his mom's in crazy hospital because she believes that the doll is evil.
Right.
We know that the doll is, so this isn't as interesting.
Yeah, I really think that these 2 opening scenes, other than showing us how Chucky's put back together, is just to explain the events of the first film to anyone who might be coming into this one having not watched Child's Play for whatever reason.
I think that with as simple as the plots of these movies are, I think the the expository, like, Andy's mom is in crazy jail because she thinks the doll was real, and that's who she is saying murdered those people. And it's like, okay, so there's a killer doll who murders people, and no one believes that. The problem is that in these scenes, and as you continue with people not believing Andy and not believing that the doll is real and evil and a murderer, you're kind of repeating the formula that works really well in the first movie, which is no one's going to fucking believe it's a killer doll. And then you get really good reveals where he comes to life in front of them and they freak the fuck out, especially Andy's mom. That's the best part of that movie is him fucking screaming in her hands. It's amazing. But in this movie, we, the audience, have already gotten that in the first movie. So if you count the first movie into the viewing of this, it's like, well, yes, we know, but I think it handles it well. And it's the next scene where in the car with Madsen, which is a really brilliant way to get them back, like to get Chucky back to Andy. That's the thing I like about this movie, especially on the rewatch, is they know it works. They know it's going to be fun. They know it's going to be funny and effective, and they're not going to waste time with the most boring elements of the plot.
Right.
Well, how does Chucky find him? It's the fucking... I love, and this is mild spoilers for a movie that we haven't discussed yet. This is mild spoilers for the 2018 Halloween film. A lot of that movie is about how does Michael get back to Jamie Lee Curtis. We don't need that in this. This isn't some 40-year-long adventure. This is, well, how does Chucky get back to Andy? He basically threatens to kill somebody if they don't take him there.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. Andy has been between these scenes that you're describing. He has gone to his new foster family's home. They are Joanne and Phil. Now, those characters, Joanne is played by Ginny Agutter. I believe is how you pronounce that last name.
Who knows?
She was in Logan's Run. Basically, whenever I was watching this time, I was like, where have I seen her from before? And she's in a movie called Logan's Run, which is like a sci-fi thriller, I believe. She's an American Werewolf in London.
Oh my God.
She's the nurse who like takes in
Oh
our
my
lead.
God, you're fucking right.
Like you see her face, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It took me, but I had to look it up.
Oh, that's a good movie.
Yeah.
As good as Child's Play 2 is, let's stop talking about Child's Play 2 now, and let's talk about American Werewolf in London. So the question is, how many times can I do that joke?
I don't know.
That's the last time.
Yeah, that's the last time.
Wink.
She had a cameo in Darkman, which
Oh my
still
God.
a movie I haven't seen.
That's
But,
weird because that is an example of a movie that I have now seen that you have not.
oh, did you watch Darkman?
I did watch Darkman. I was listening to a previous episode where we mentioned Darkman, and I was like, oh, I want to fucking watch that.
Yeah.
And it's Sam Raimi, so I found it streaming and I put it on.
And then she's in The Avengers and Captain America, The Winter Soldier.
What?
She
What?
is one of the members of like the Shadow Council. That's like in Winter Soldier, whenever it's kind of revealed that, you know, Hydra is operating behind the, you know, the whole thing. She's one of those talkie heads.
Okay.
Something
weird.
Council person Holly.
Okay. That like
But yeah.
tell Nick Fury that they're going to nuke New York.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
Yeah. I couldn't have told you that.
No.
Without looking it up.
Well,
So-
I mean, she's one of the most important parts of American Werewolf in London, and I did not recognize her.
Right.
So,
and
what does that
then
say about us?
We're fake fans.
We're bastard men.
And then her husband, Phil Simpson, he's played by Garrett Graham. He has done some genre work. He's worked in a lot of stuff, but Beware the Blob, he played, he was in Phantom of the Paradise. He was in a movie called Demon Seed in 1977. He's in Chopping Mall. He's in...
Oh my God, he is in Chopping Mall.
He's in It's Alive 3. He's in Chud 2.
Should.
And he's in The Wasp Woman from 1995, which is a remake of the Roger Corman film. So yeah, Andy moves in with Joanne and Phil Simpson. And whenever he first goes in the house, I noticed he's wearing a sweater with like a plane on the front of it. And okay, this is going to be the first of many things where I'm like, this has got to be a reference to another horror movie.
Right.
Because Danny Torrance in The Shining,
Mm-hmm.
in most of his scenes in that movie, and a lot of scenes in that movie, he is wearing a sweater with an Apollo rocket
Okay.
on the front of it.
Right.
Very similar style to this.
I believe that any similarity between this franchise and other horror movies at the time, there's no way they're a coincidence.
Yeah.
Listening
There's
to
two specific things in there that it's just like, well, no,
Yeah.
this is on purpose.
listening to Tom Mancini talk about this stuff, watching him over the years create and craft this series, he is such a lover of the genre.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way. There's no way there's a coincidence. It's all got to be intentional.
Yeah.
But I didn't pick that up. That's a good pull.
Yeah, it's just, I've seen The Shining, so many times, and I've watched and read through tons of other stuff to do with it, the symbolism in it, and there's a documentary about like all the conspiracy theories that have to do with it and everything like that. It starts really great, and then it goes off the rails. And
You'll have to let me watch that documentary when I watch The Shining for the first time, because I still haven't seen it.
I know we've got to change that soon.
In October of this year, it was put on in this house to watch. The first 5 seconds of that beautiful helicopter shot were put on. And I went, no, and I turned it off. And I went, if I watch this without Derek, he may take his own life. So
And I would have.
So you're alive because of me and not having seen The Shining yet.
That's good. I guess.
Please murder me. Cut that out.
So this is where they have established basically there's a bunch of old stuff in this house, antiques and
Yes.
porcelain statues and things, and he's not supposed to touch them.
Which normally those little quirky things are just like whatever. But I like that pays off. I like that everything. This is another one of those very cabin in the woodsy sort of everything has a payoff. And I like that.
Yeah, very, very well done. This is also where we meet Kyle, who is another foster kid who is about to turn 18.
Yeah.
About to like age out of the system.
Of these three, Child's Play 2 and 3, this is my favorite non-Andy, non-Chucky character. I love Kyle.
Yeah.
She's so fun. She's really well played.
Yeah, no, she's great. Played by Christina Elise. This is I believe her acting debut is in this film. That's
surprising.
I know, and because she's really good.
Yeah.
She did a long stint on Beverly Hills 90210, like 12 episodes or something in that. She was in a movie called Boiling Point. She was in a version of Body Snatchers, not the 50s or the 70s version, obviously, but there was one that was done like in the either the 90s or the early aughts, and then also not the one that's got Nicole Kidman in it. Anyway,
Kyle's smoking in her room, and it's very clear that Kyle's the one that's like, no, fuck authority. Fuck, I keep getting kicked out of the system, so fuck the system. And it's like, yeah, man, you're cool as fuck. You got short blonde hair. You seem like you take no shit. I like Kyle a lot.
yeah, no, I think her performance is really well done for, that type of character in this movie.
She being the female voice of the clip we played, that is the funniest scene. That clip that we played, and we'll get there eventually, but that's the funniest scene in the entire movie, and it is because of her performance. It's so funny the way it's all played out, and Chucky just being like so pissed that he's threatening to kill this girl. He's got a knife in his fucking hand. He's the goddamn strangler. He's this murderer, infamous and evil. And he's sitting there having to pretend to be this fucking doll in front of a cop. And he's just, well, what's your name? Chucky. And he's so mad. I love that scene. And she really sells it.
Andy is being shown his new room with all his new toys, and he uncovers a good guy doll,
Tommy,
that tumbles out of the closet on top of him. And it's named Tommy, more than likely after director of the first film, Tom Holland.
which is that's a good bit of acting from Alex Vincent there. As a child actor, his performance is immediately terrified, which is probably not so much a performance because I know that if I was a child of his age having to be in Child's Play and sing that goddamn doll all the time, I'd piss my pants too.
Yeah, you have to think like what was his experience like on set? Did he know he was in a horror movie? Because there's a lot of times with like child actors, not to immediately jump back to The Shining, but the actor who played Danny in that film, like Stanley Kubrick kind of framed things in a way that like none of the scary stuff was happening around that child actor. And so he didn't know he was in a horror film until it was over. This is where we get back to the scene where Mattson has Chucky. It's raining. They're in the car.
He's like, Mattson's trying to fuck. And so he's on the car phone. And it's like, no, I didn't bring the vodka. Damn it. And it's like, so he pulls over at this liquor store. And it is such a wonderful bit of puppetry because they're in this cramped car. And he's sitting in the passenger seat rifling through fucking paperwork. Why Mattson has paperwork on Andy, I don't really know.
I guess from the court case.
But it's like detailed.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it would have to be. But he figures out, and it's the foster home gets that phone call. And it's like, oh, I'm his Uncle Charles.
Yeah, great line,
Yes.
line delivery.
But Chucky finds out essentially what home he is now, where Andy is. So Mattson gets back in the car because Chucky has set off the car alarm, which was like, why? He'll get back in the car eventually.
Yeah, I don't know why he needed him to get there even faster.
Because he wants him there. Yeah, he wants him there now. And Chucky's a fucking psychopath.
And maybe just to throw him off a bit.
Maybe. He gets in the car and he gets a gun pushed to his temple or like the back of his head. And Chucky's voice is like, drive. And he gives him like an order. There is no fucking way. The way that shot is framed and the way like where they are in the scene, there's no fucking way that guy doesn't see Chucky.
Right.
He has a rear view goddamn mirror. Like there's no way. We said this last week. We mentioned this last week when Aunt Maggie, the mom's friend in the first movie, picks up Andy and the Chucky doll. The Chucky doll is bigger than Andy. The doll is huge. There's no fucking way he doesn't see that he's being held at gunpoint by a fucking doll. But the movie needs him to not know that.
Yeah.
So it just doesn't show him.
Yeah, to me, it's unclear as to whether he knows or not, but he just kind of goes along with it as if he's being held up like, oh, this guy's going to rob me and take my car or something.
Yeah. Either way, it's a blunder of the movie because
it's
if
weird.
he doesn't know it's the doll, the movie has not framed it well. If he does know it's the doll, the movie fails because nobody should ever respond to a doll coming to life and holding them to gunpoint. Like, where do you want to go? Where do you want me to take you? No, you start screaming and you tear your eyes out because you've lost your mind. Excellent character acting by Dorff. He's wonderful.
Yeah.
Every line that he says, I think it's the reason this franchise has worked so well for me. Every line he says is both, you can take it both, sinister and terrifying because of who Charles Lee Ray is and the suggested history that he is a mass murderer. And then it's also because he's in the doll, it's just fucking hilarious. And so you get to have both, and that's great.
Yeah, it brings this interesting tone to the whole film. So Chucky forces Mattson to drive him to like a park.
Yeah.
He has then tied his hands behind the chair with like a jump rope.
And that's great.
Because his backseat, Mattson's backseat of this car is like just filled with toys.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. He works for the company. He's having to take stuff back and forth, I'm sure.
But like the killer doll tying somebody up with like nylon is weird. But him tying him up with the jump rope is fucking hilarious.
Right.
It's great.
And it's revealed that it's not a real gun. It's a squirt gun.
Yes.
And that seems to be, that's the first indication that Mattson knows that it's not a real gun. Still unclear if he knows it's a doll or not. But then he gets suffocated with like the bag that a good guy doll would come in, I guess.
Like a plastic bag.
Because it has like the good guy logo on the bag itself. We then get, I guess this park is very close to the Simpsons' house where Andy is, because then the next thing we get is Chucky's POV. So we're back to a doll POV shot, which I love.
And because it's the Simpsons' house, as he approaches, you hear dun 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 dun. Sorry, I've been waiting to do that the whole episode.
It's you got to figure, the perfect moment to do it, and that was it.
Yeah, the Chucky POV is my favorite part. It is. We've talked about in this show 1,000 times what defines a slasher, and it being from his POV both defines the movie as a slasher, gives it a home in the niche genre that it belongs in, but also because it is those low angles and it's the child's point of view, you really do both get the whimsy of, oh my God, it's a fucking doll. And then also, oh my God, it's a fucking doll. Ew. Like
Yeah.
this thing is alive and evil and like wants to kill you. And it's because we take for granted the premise of this series. But at the end of the day, when you see the camera movements from that low, it's like, oh, he could be anywhere. And it's pretty scary.
Yeah, it allows him, to hide in places that, a full-sized adult wouldn't be able to.
Sure. Yeah.
That POV shot especially I love because you see the whole run across the street, and he gets up to the door. And then in the same shot, his hand reaches up into frame and opens the door, like turns the knob.
There's a couple times where you see his hands come into frame in this movie, and they could have used like a glove. They could have used anything. I love that it's a puppet hand.
Yes. We then, Andy's being tucked in. He's read a bedtime story from Joanne. We get this amazing shot where the camera kind of moves back down the hallway upstairs and around the stairs, the thunder's cracking and lightning's flashing on the wall and everything. And it pans down to look at Chucky at the base of the stairs. And he's standing there, and that's where Chucky finds the Tommy buddy doll.
Right.
And
for no reason. And this is part of the reason that I love the character so much. And why I think that the script in this movie does so much heavy lifting to create the character. In kind of the nuts and bolts conversation of this, you mentioned Don had said that he wanted to flesh the character out more, that he didn't feel like it was in the first movie. This is a great example of that. There's no reason that Chucky needed to take anything and bash that doll's fucking face in. There's no reason.
No.
Chucky hates being in the doll. He hates the fact that he is turning into the doll. He can't stand his lot in life. He is willing to essentially murder a child to get back to being a full-blown human. But he still smashes that fucking doll's face in like almost like he's jealous. Because it's a doll. You take its batteries out, you bury it in the yard, you throw it in the fucking trash can. There's a million things you can do. He is so psychotic that he smashes its face like he would anyone, like a person. But again, it's a payoff of, when we meet the Simpsons, the Foster family, the mother says very specifically, don't touch this stuff. These are my antiques. This one specifically is very important to me. Please don't touch it. And so we see immediately he's going to get Andy into trouble. He smashes this fucking thing into the doll's face. Its eye is like all smashed out. What's funny is it's very like Bride of Chucky coded there, because like the way one eye is almost all the way out and the other one is still like eyelided. It reminded me a lot of that.
Yeah, no, I can see that that comparison there. So yeah, like you said, he smashes it and
buries it in the fucking yard.
And he buries it under the swing in their yard. And that's very important. The next day, Andy is then, of course, blamed for the broken statue. I love, I mentioned this before, but a lot of low angle shots, and I don't just mean from like Chucky's POV shots, but like when we're looking at Andy or we're interacting with them, you see it and you can actually see like the ceiling of the set or the, if it was an actual house or something,
you are never shown an adult's perspective looking down at Andy.
Right.
If Andy is speaking to an adult, you are at Andy's level looking up at the adults.
Yes.
If it's a room with just adults, obviously you're at average height, but it is typically down from the bottom up, which is great. It makes the set seem huge. It makes the world seem like overwhelmingly big, which is really effective.
Yeah. That's the first time I think we're shown the basement. He and Kyle are hanging out down there. They're doing laundry. They have kind of a moment between them. You get a couple of these like scenes throughout the film where they have their little connection, she being that like kind of, I'm the older sister, you're an annoying kid at first, and then kind of growing to, be protective of Andy.
Yeah.
But that's also then we're introduced to Chucky now pretending to be the Tommy doll.
Right.
To get at Andy. And I love the first time that that's revealed. Andy talks to who he thinks is Tommy. And Chucky, we know that, says, "Hi, I'm Tommy." And there's this slight hesitation.
His eyes look around.
Yeah, his eyes like just for a fraction of a second kind of like, what was that name again? What did that doll say last night before I murdered it.
And I love the noise, the robotic, because what's funny is that Chucky, even alive, his body makes those sounds. He blinks and it's like, tick, tick, and I love that. I think that's great.
Andy, of course, checks the batteries to make sure that they're in the doll, which they are. Which
is so funny because it immediately quells his suspicion. Chucky gets away with it. He hides in plain sight again. And it's so funny because like it only works because it's a kid.
Right.
But like I really, really like the infiltration back into the house. I also like how quickly he reveals himself. Again, movie's very good about not wasting our time. The first moment he's alone with Andy, Andy wakes up and he's fucking tied to the bed with presumably yet more jump ropes.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's like jump ropes and like maybe some tube socks or something because he has like a sock stuffed in his mouth so he can't scream.
Tube socks, of course, sound like Tubi, but he's tied to the fucking bed. And Chucky's like, basically like, sorry, bud, gotta do it.
And just immediately goes for the chant.
Yeah.
But Kyle.
Give me the power, I beg of you.
And then Kyle is trying to sneak back in through the window, so he has to stop.
Now, this is my exact note that I wrote here. It's going to go through the scene pretty quickly. This is the note. I wrote, quote, so to get this straight, Andy gets tied up by Chucky on the bed with jump ropes. Kyle sneaks in through the window, doesn't realize that the kid could not have tied himself up, goes to untie the kid. Then the parents come in and assume that the teenage girl tied him up and then don't press that issue with that girl at all.
Yeah.
It's like, why would you do this? Oh, because you snuck out and you didn't want to get caught. And it's like, if you have a teenager in your home, listeners at home, if you have a teenager and your teenager is willing to tie up a child to sneak out and hang out with their friends, you have a bad child and you're a bad parent.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
You're a bad parent and your parents were bad parents.
The things I want to point out with that scene just before Kyle comes in, I love the difference between the animatronics because there is a noticeable difference between whenever it is the good guy doll animatronic versus the Chucky animatronic.
And that's a precedent that gets set in this movie because in the first movie, it's almost like the longer it goes on, the more Chucky becomes Charles Lee Ray and the more human the face becomes until eventually he snaps and then the face kind of morphs into the, and then something Alistair pointed out is that the longer the movie goes on, the more manic and human it looks. But this establishes that he can swap.
Yeah.
He can go from being a good guy doll to Chucky to a good guy doll. And he does that throughout the rest of the series.
Yeah. And it's you just notice the different kind of features. Like physically it looks a bit different, but it's also what the animatronic can do.
Yeah.
Like they both can turn their heads and blink their eyes, move their mouth. But then whenever he is Chucky and he's mad, then his eyebrow ridge moves, his nose, when he sneers, that upper lip curls and his nose tightens up around it.
Well, and his tongue becomes a little bit more animated. He becomes a person.
Yeah.
And, this is to tie it back to Evil Dead, the Deadites chameleon themselves. And this is exactly that.
Yes.
It's, well, look at me. I'm just the fucking doll again. And it's such a good, no, the audience knows, but the audience knows what Andy knows, but there's no way anybody else would know because to know that is to be crazy. To know that is to have entered Wonderland. Nothing makes sense anymore because a doll is alive.
Right.
And happens to be a murderer.
The other thing
and sexy as hell.
This one's a little less on the an exact example, but it does remind me of the clown scene from Poltergeist.
Yeah, okay.
There's a lot of clown imagery in Andy's bedroom.
Yeah.
There's one of those Boppo inflatable clown things, but there's a lot of little clown figurines and stuff on the shelves. And so it just reminds me of that from Poltergeist. Again, don't know if it's intentional. That one's a little bit more of a stretch than a couple examples that I have in a second.
Yeah. But this is the first time Chucky gets foiled.
Yeah.
His plan is dead again. And now he has to just sit there and wait.
And and because Phil takes him and throws him into the basement.
Yeah.
Basically to prove to Andy, he's just a doll. And that has one of my I think it's an absolutely amazing shot.
Yeah, you
in this
mentioned
film.
that in our rewatch. We kind of stopped it to go over what about it you liked, which made me appreciate it even more.
Because it's after he tosses him down there, you see from the basement point of view looking up the stairs at Phil and Andy, and he tosses, Chucky down, and then we show from their point of view looking down, and as Phil clicks off the light, the basement light goes off, and then the moonlight shines in from the window, so he has like that cast upon him on the floor, and then he sits upright from the floor, and
It's the fluidity of going from good guy doll to Chucky, from the action motion of tossing him to sitting up. And it's so fluid and it's so immediate because that had to have been a cut.
oh yeah, it absolutely is. But
There's
in
no sign
that
of it.
shot itself, there's not. It's like he goes from laying to sitting up, and it's just the change in the lighting. And I don't know, everything about it, I just really like that shot.
It's also, I think that is like the imagery
Mhm.
of what the killer is. I agree with you. It's great.
The next day, Andy leaves for school. He gets on the school bus, and we see Chucky's legs crawling up underneath the back of the bus. So we know that he's following Andy to school.
Now, for you eagle-eared listeners, you'll remember Derek mentioned the teacher earlier on, and I said that I had a pin
Yeah.
in this. Now, Derek, you mentioned that I am typically pretty good at pointing at an actor and going, oh my God, that's so-and-so from so-and-so.
Yes, you are.
I've never had a more explosive reaction to seeing a face. For the record, what is the teacher's name?
Miss Kettlewell. She's played by Beth Grant.
Beth Grant is in The Office.
Okay.
Beth Grant plays Dwight Schrute's babysitter, whom he brings to Jan and Michael's dinner party as his +1 to be invited.
Okay.
He then goes on to express the fact that their relationship is, quote, purely carnal. So the teacher in Child's Play 2 is the old woman babysitter that Dwight Schrute fucks in The Office.
Wow. I'm sure in her long and storied career, that's the thing she's most proud of.
I got murdered by Chucky and I fucked Dwight from The Office.
She also was in a movie called Flatliners, which is a horror film from before this one. She was in the Stephen King adaptation, The Dark Half. She's in Donnie Darko. She's in No Country for Old Men. She's in the Netflix series of Unfortunate Events. She plays the woman with hair but no beard.
Yes.
And she is in Willy's Wonderland, which is the Nick Cage starring Five Nights at Freddy's ripoff movie.
When you and I went to the theaters to see The First Omen, Carly and Dylan stayed back at the apartment because they hadn't watched all of the Omens with us leading up to The First Omen. So they weren't as interested as we were. And
Right.
that's what they watched. And then we got home and the four of us explained the insanity of each of those films.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we came out on top on that one.
Definitely.
So they are now at school, and on point here, Miss Kettlewell is talking about Pinocchio, which is about a doll who wants to
lies.
become a real boy.
And lies a lot.
Yeah, he does lie a lot. Chucky, I guess they had gone to recess or something, and Chucky is like rifling through the papers.
So this is my favorite shot of the movie because he's sitting at the desk and it's his little body and he's just going, no, God damn it. And he's just sitting there doing Chucky mumbles, which is like, he's this irascible old man just like, God fucking damn it. And it's so funny. It is diction away from just being and he's trying to find, obviously he's trying to find something from Andy, and that pays off so well in that Andy has a conflict with a classmate. He gets in trouble with the teacher. And then she comes up to him with the paper, his paper, and it in crayon in these big bold letters just says, fuck you, bitch. She goes, what the fuck is this? And he's like, I didn't do that. And it's like, yeah, of course he didn't. Look at him. Of course he didn't write fuck you, bitch in crayon. That's the other, it's in crayon.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah. And so he tries to explain because he sees that the Chucky doll is there in the classroom.
In the cubby. Yeah.
And he was cleaning up and like, oh, well, here he is. She's not going to believe him.
No.
She, it's the end of the school day. Everyone else gets to leave. he has to sit back in his desk, put his head down, and she locks the Chucky doll away in the closet.
Well, and then importantly, locks Andy in the classroom because
Yes.
it was 1990.
Yeah.
And you could just hit kids that you taught back then.
I mean, she is inches away from doing that anytime.
That's the deleted scene. But and Chucky's like, oh my God, there's so many parallels. All these horror movies, there's so many wonderful parallels that you can pull. And I like to pull them. And here's a good example. Like Cheryl from the fruit cellar in the cabin calling out to be let out.
Yeah.
Chucky's in the closet going, come on, Andy, let me out. Everything's gonna be fine. I'm working on my Chucky impression, but
It's getting there.
oh, thanks. And it's so funny because basically what he's saying is like, it's not gonna hurt. I'm just gonna steal your body. Just like, what the fuck, man?
So thankfully, Chucky's locked in this closet. You get that cool, like Andy looks through the keyhole.
With
and
Chucky's eyeball.
Chucky's eye swings over,
Oh my God, it does. It is like the fucking Toy Story scene because his eye looks like Woody's eye a little bit, like kind of painted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it definitely looks like a painted, like
Like a doll's-
toy,
Like a doll's eyes.
yeah. Andy, he escapes through the window, which
Yes.
is the first time of many times that people go out of windows in this movie. But the teacher comes back in and Chucky's still making noise, trying to get out of there in this locked closet.
So she comes in and she's like, Andy, why are you in the closet? Because you locked the fucking door and then unlocks the door to get into the closet. But yeah, no,
Doesn't pick up on how the impossibility of all that.
Well, that's another thing about this movie and the series is that the adults in these movies are fucking stupid. Like categorically, other than the first movie where there's it's not that bad. Moving forward in this franchise, every adult is a fucking idiot. But she specifically. And then it is my favorite, because she's so mean to Andy. And for the most part, I think the audience, especially nowadays, the audience roots for Chucky in this movie. This is one of those moments where it's like, yeah, but Andy's still a kid and this teacher was like really terrible to him. So it's like she's looking through the closet and like this like supply closet. And there's like all the kids' winter coats and like dodgeballs and shit are everywhere. And she's moving stuff around. She's trying to find him. And Chucky's like fucking laughing. And then she gets stabbed in it's like near the collarbone with what looks to be an air pump.
Yeah. It's like what you would fill like a basketball with.
Which is horrible.
Yeah. Because I mean, you've used them before. Like you know how big that needle is.
Yeah.
Like how thick the needle is, like the gauge.
So I have a racing bicycle, like a lean forward handle racing bicycle.
Yeah.
And it needs one of those needles for the tire. And yeah, it's like half my pinky. So to have that stuck in you, and then you hear like the of the inflation, it's like he just pumps a little bit of air into her fucking like muscle, and then she falls back
And smashes into the desks.
It's horrific and violent. And then he comes slapping this measuring stick into his little hand like a police baton.
Yeah.
And it's the best scene because it's clearly a puppet, but they have hidden his cables. They've hidden the way they've made him walk. And he's just slowly, like shoulders are moving, arms are moving. And he walks towards her and he's laughing and delivering these excellently intimidating lines. But it's her performance that sells it because it's realizing the doll is alive.
That thing that you had just picked up and tossed in there a second ago.
It's coming after you. And then it becomes a fucking circus again because he beats her to death off camera, which that's a complaint that I have with this movie. Most of the violence is off camera, which I understand early 90s. I mean, a lot of these franchises become very off camera. Very famously, a lot of the mid to later Friday the 13th movies, all those deaths are off camera. It becomes an issue. But this doesn't escape that. But it is hilarious to me. And it's what a child's play centric death to have a school teacher be beaten to death in a classroom by Chucky with a measuring stick.
Yeah. This is where I will put my my hat back on, my tinfoil hat maybe, of what sort of reference I think that this scene has.
You're crazy.
So the scene whenever as she walks into the closet, I noticed it on this last rewatch. beside the door inside the closet, there is a cushioned archery target.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, why in a elementary school would they be shooting bow and arrows?
Yeah.
Even at recess or anything like that? It doesn't make any sense for it to be there.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at the other stuff in there, and there's like all sorts of like sports balls from all different types of games and things like that. Things that you would
Like sporting equipment.
sporting
yeah.
equipment, things that you would use at a camp, things that you would, at like a summer camp or something like that. You'd have all these activities
Isn't
to
that
do.
like a net, like a gold net somewhere in the closet? I believe so.
Possibly,
but
yeah,
I
yeah.
understand what you're saying.
And also the score itself has like kind of like a xylophone. It has like this sting that happens, and there's kind of a xylophone that kind of plays, after it. And it very much to me feels like Friday the 13th in its score and in the imagery around it. Because there's a scene in the first Friday the 13th where there is the archery range, and one of the counselors like fires an arrow, and it almost hits one of the other counselors. And there's like a big, flirty bit between them. And then I think the killer in that movie, does a similar thing later and then kills somebody with an arrow as well.
Yeah.
That's what tipped me off to it. Again, could be really reaching here, but that's what it makes me think of.
I'd be willing to say that that's probable, because it doesn't. Immediately, it feels like set dressing, just innocent set dressing. But pointing out the fact that you've got a fucking archery target in an elementary school closet, like why the fuck would that be there? So yeah, no, I think you're probably onto something. This is the next part of this is a problem that I have with the movie. It's something I'll criticize, wherein Andy is obviously scolded or by these. He's explaining what's happened, and they're like, no. The doll isn't Chucky. The doll is Tommy, and the Tommy doll is. And the Phil opens the door to the basement, to the cellar, whatever.
Yeah,
and he's down there in the same position or whatever. And I don't like that. It has to happen for the movie.
Yeah,
but like, how the fuck would he know that they're about to open the door? How did he get back? How
much time has passed between Andy running out the window of the classroom, him committing the murder of the teacher? Andy has to get home, and Chucky has to get home.
Nobody saw a doll running.
Yeah.
Like, it just becomes, and we don't need it. It doesn't affect the movie. I don't think it makes the movie poorer in any way. But it's those little things where it's like, just don't have him look for the doll in the basement. Just be like, no, that didn't happen. He's a child saying that a doll has come to life. You don't actively need to prove it. But for the sake of the plot, he has proven it. And so then Andy starts to have trouble. It's like, we almost have like Andy starts to doubt what he's seeing.
Yeah. And Phil and Joanne have the conversation because Phil has been kind of like, I'm not sure about this kid, taking on this kid and all his troubles is worth it. And so, they're talking about maybe giving him back into the foster system. And that's when Kyle and Andy have another little scene where, Kyle explains like, hey, I've been in and out of like over a dozen of these foster homes. Like,
and this is at the swing.
No. This is in the bedroom. In Andy's room, they're talking because Andy's sad because he's hearing the conversation that Phil and Joanne are having about Phil saying like, he's not our kid. We could just give him back. Like, who's going to be more upset about that? Him or you, Joanne? And so Kyle basically just explains of like, look, every time that I get traded off to these other homes and things like that, like I have to pick myself back up. And I understand that like the lesson I'm learning here is that you can only rely on yourself. Like you can't rely on other people. And I like watching the rest of the movie. I tried to keep that in mind of like, do we get an example of that? And we do. It does have a payoff at the end of the film. Of that is kind of the lesson that Andy learns in this movie.
Yeah.
We get another POV shot after that because it's nighttime now, and it's one of my favorite little like tricks of the movie is we get the 2 feet off the ground POV shot running around through the house for a bit. He goes into the kitchen, and then the hand that reaches out and opens the drawer is Andy, not Chucky.
And he pulls out like a Dr. Frankenfurter at the dinner table electric knife. Also used in Eli Roth's Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Except this one was a wireless one. I don't think I've ever seen. Like I guess a non-corded battery powered one.
Do you know what's funny? In our garage right now, Carly has one of those.
Okay.
Yeah. Cordless and everything. She also has a Chucky doll.
I don't think those things should be stored that close together.
I was going to do a whole bit where we pretend to get murdered by the Chucky. Guys, close your eyes. Imagine a hilarious bit wherein Derek and I pretend to get murdered by a doll. Okay.
Dude, that was hilarious. Podcasting is like it's theater of the mind.
Yeah. Who did the effects for this film? Like not the puppet, but the other effects, special effects and stuff. Is that just the same team?
Yeah, it's the same team. Kevin Yeager.
Kevin Yeager pulls off in this next sequence one of the most impressive practical effects of really any horror movie I've seen, but specifically this franchise. And it is Phil and what's the wife's name?
Joanne.
Phil and Joanne are in bed watching television, and Phil hears a noise, and he's like, I think I heard something downstairs. You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to go look. So he goes down, he sees the basement door is open, and he begins to walk down the steps, and he sees Andy's got the fucking standing there because he's confronting Chucky. He looks around for Chucky, finds him. Chucky's taunting him or whatever. He's standing there with the little electric knife when Phil comes down the steps, and he looks up, and Phil's like, why the fuck do you have that? And he's basically like a parent. Like, he's a parent, but it's also like, I'm not your parent, and you're doing crazy shit in my house.
Well, okay, from Phil's point of view,
right.
He has more or less adopted a kid who is in the foster system because he claims that his doll killed a bunch of people. And his mother backed him on that and has been taken and put into an asylum.
So at best case scenario, mom's a murderer. Worst case scenario, Andy's the murderer.
And he is now in my house, and he's been doing weird things. He just got in trouble at school. His teacher has ended up killed.
It is the middle of the night.
And he is standing in my basement holding a electric knife.
Lit by the moon.
Yeah.
But Phil begins to walk down the stairs, and Chucky is shown to have grabbed what looks to be like maybe like a coat rack or something. It's something with a hook.
So I thought it was a fireplace poker, the first rewatch that I had the other day.
Originally, I thought it was a fucking harpoon.
It's closer to that. It's like a hook you would use for boating.
Okay. Well, that makes sense because there's like a lot of sports equipment and stuff down there.
Yeah.
Just the whole neighborhood is filled with sports.
Yeah. There's a lot of creepy, weird stuff in that basement.
Which is good. It's effective.
But you do see it. I caught it on last rewatch. You see a shot of it leaned up against the wall in an earlier shot when Andy's wandering around down there.
It's the filmmaking, and I think that'll be a theme on this show, especially as we move into new franchises. Derek and I are suckers for fucking Chekhov's guns. We love shit that pays off. And so even like that little detail is great to find out. I didn't notice it, but that's great. But he uses this hook on Phil's leg as he's walking down the steps to basically trip him. And Phil falls, and it's horrible. It's a great effect, but he breaks his fucking neck on the ground and immediately dies.
Yeah. So that death, because whenever I was watching it, it almost looks like stop motion or something. Like something looks a little off about it. And so what it is, it's a film trick that they call the reverse pull. And basically they start in the end position of him on the ground with his neck against, cocked against the ground like that. And then they pulley him up into the standing position.
Okay.
And then they reverse the film.
Because it looks amazing.
Yeah.
And the way his neck is bent, I don't know if that's just the physicality of the performer or if that is an effect. It is haunting. It's so creepy.
Absolutely.
And what makes that better is that Chucky is then like laughing his fucking ass off. The more time we spend with Chucky showing that he revels in this, it is a love of his to cause this horror, this death. It sells the scariness of the doll. It sells that because on its face, murder doll, meh. Megan is a great example. Megan's a great movie. I love that movie. But at the end of the day, it's just a doll.
Right.
It doesn't, but Chucky isn't a doll. Chucky happens to be an doll, but Chucky is evil incarnate. He just likes to fucking murder people. And Joanne comes down and is like sobbing. It's immediately like, my life is fucking over.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he was just alive. I was just talking to him.
And I have fought to keep this kid. I thought I was doing the right thing by him, by Andy.
And Andy goes to walk up to her, and she's basically like, get the fuck away from me.
Yeah.
And so everyone
That
has
performance is amazing.
It is. Well, and that's another good moment. Maybe I was too hard at the beginning of this because that's another good Alex Vincent moment is the like timid fear, because it's even as a kid, it's like you have to be left alone now. I have to leave you alone because of what you're going through. There's no way that I can interject myself here, but you have to know that this wasn't me.
Right.
And it's like, well, what do you do? It's really good. That scene is probably narratively the best scene in the movie. You get an excellent form of payoff. Andy is taken away.
Right. Back to the group home.
You pointed something out to me that made me laugh really fucking hard the last time we watched this, which is the ambulance crew that take Phil's body. He's in a body bag on a stretcher. He is not strapped to the stretcher at all. It's just the body bag is on top of the stretcher. They take the stretcher, they put it in the back of the ambulance, they roll it into the ambulance. They don't secure it in the ambulance.
Nobody like steps up into the ambulance to like strap it down or anything.
And they just close the doors and drive away. So I made the joke that they then fishtail and the doors fly open and he goes sailing out into the river. And that's how they dispose of bodies in Chicago.
Yeah, we have to assume so.
Yeah, it's where Obama's from. The next sequence is another moment of payoff where, Chucky in his I like to kill people, but I'm also a doll, so I do it in ways that are evocative of being a child, has buried Tommy, the other good guy doll, under the swing. There's a single swing in the backyard. And Kyle is still at this house. It's where she lives. And she's out in the backyard.
Yeah, she takes Chucky, who she thinks is the Tommy doll, and she throws it in the trash can. And then she takes a moment to I guess just sit on the swing. Yeah.
And as she does, your feet drag the floor. Every time you ever go to a playground, I've got an 11-year-old and you go to these playgrounds and it's always mulch or some sort of sod or ground. And then there's where the feet would drag on the swing set. It's just dug into the earth. So she does that. She begins to swing and her feet drag. And as they do, they uncover the foot of a good guy doll. She pulls it out and its face is all smashed. She's like, oh shit. And she runs to the trash can, opens it up, and he's not there.
Right. This is another scene that it starts here, and I think it goes through this whole sequence. It's one of my absolute favorites. I think it's very suspenseful because it's kind of like Karen realizing that he, is alive in Child's Play. Kyle is now realizing the same thing here.
Yes. And it leads to another good. We've talked about this a couple times in the history of our show. We'll talk about it again over and over and over again. I love somebody who can play a dead body really well, who can play like a really effective dead face. And as she goes to the house, Kyle, she sees Joanne, and Joanne is kind of sitting in a chair, kind of like slumped a little bit.
Yeah, at the because she hears the sewing machine.
Yeah. Well, and what's funny is that oh my God, because Joanne's fabric.
Yeah.
But she's at the sewing machine and Kyle approaches and spins her around after she doesn't answer. And her eyes are like bulging and her throat has just been absolutely slashed.
It's one of those things, like you were saying, like he revels in like the killing.
It's what makes Michael Myers so fucking scary, is that Michael doesn't just kill them. He kills them and then he hides them or he poses them. It's, I had fun killing this person and now I'm going to use this person's death to terrorize the next person I'm going to kill.
Right.
Because it's not enough to kill you. I have to kill you and I have to scare you. And for Chucky, it's, I have to kill you. I'm then going to use your body to scare the next person I'm going to kill. But I'm also going to make that person take me to my ultimate victim, which is just, and that's what ends up happening. Chucky is finally confronts Kyle. They get into her station wagon.
Before we go there, I want to take a quick moment, put my hat back on for my connections here that I'm making to other horror films.
Now, the hat is not a bit. The hat is real.
Yeah.
He created it from tinfoil. Every time he takes it off and sets it down, it loses some shape. So at this point, it is just smashed to hell.
Yeah. But it started out as like a cowboy shape hat.
It was good.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
So this one, from the backyard all the way up through this tussle that they have in the bedroom, I think with the lighting in the backyard, the shadows that the tree casts on the side of the house, the score, kind of the dreamlike feel of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Reminds me a lot of the dream sequence in the first Nightmare on Elm Street when, I can't remember which character it is in the alleyway.
Where he gets the long arms.
The long arms.
Yeah.
It has that blue, moonlight streaming down. She goes up the stairs. There's like this odd red ball of yarn that's on the stairs.
Like
that's
goes leading up the stairs. Yeah.
And it's just something about the camera angles very much feels like Nightmare.
Yeah.
Even like she gets up to the bedroom and Chucky rises up underneath the covers of the bed and surprises her from behind. They smash into the mirror that's in that room, and that's something that like Freddie and Nancy do in that movie as well.
Yeah. I will say that because you mentioned that to me last night, is that sequence, especially like out by the trash can, like the side of the house where you can see like the lattice and the fence, and it's in that blue cast like night lit scenery. You pointed that out to me, that it reminded you of that scene, and it was immediately like, oh my God, you're fucking right, because they look so similar. But it works in this very well.
Yes.
You have to be a little dreamlike to justify a killer fucking Cabbage Patch Kid.
But this is where he forces Kyle at knife point to drive him to Andy.
Yeah, and this is our clip for the episode. It is such a funny fucking sequence. It's so funny. The cop being it is the annoyance in Chucky's voice when he says Chucky. It's so goddamn fun because he's tired. He's tired of he is in pain. His nose is fucking bleeding. He is stuck in this fucking doll. He has been, stabbed, shot, kicked, thrown, burnt. He has been excavated, rebuilt. Then he has had all of this shit. He's been thrown downstairs. He's been thrown into trash cans, all the disrespect in the fucking world. And so he's just like, oh, what's your name? Chucky. And he's just like so goddamn good. But the
thing that I noticed on last night's rewatch is the cop, right before they are let go, the cop is like, watch your speed and buckle up for safety, which is something that Kyle immediately like twigs onto.
Yeah.
Cause then they continue driving down the road and Kyle clicks that seatbelt before flooring it and slamming on brakes and sending Chucky flying out the windshield of this car.
Yes.
She tries to, run over him a couple times, slamming up against this fence.
He's too wee.
Yeah, he is. He evades her completely. And then you don't realize until after the scene in the foster home, the group home, but that's like less than a block down the street from there. She just walks over to her car is in the background of a later shot, and then she just goes back over to it.
You couldn't have done that earlier.
I always figured it was like well down the street or something, but no, it's right there.
And we get another moment where an old woman realizes that Chucky is alive.
Yeah. That reveal is very quick, but I like it a lot.
This lobby of the foster home reminds me, and this is a weird pull, but visually it reminds me so much of Steve, the eldest brother in The Haunting of Hill House.
Okay.
His apartment building.
Okay.
It was just like, it's like so similar, like just the way that it's laid out.
Yeah.
That's what it made me think of. I don't know why.
What it makes me think of anytime they show this building from the outside, you have like the arched windows that have like the black and white alternating brick. You go inside, it has these very high ceilings and the staircase that like goes up at 3 angles and everything like that. I don't think you've seen this version of the film, but the original Suspiria, the dance studio, the dance school that they're in, it reminds me of kind of the architecture there. It's a very, very specific look.
I have not seen the original. I would like to, and I'm excited to do that because the Amazon Prime version with Tilda Swinton is an incredible movie.
Yes, it
and
is.
we will get there. Don't worry. If you love that movie, we'll get there.
The woman who works at this group home is named Grace Poole. She's played by Grace Zabriskie.
Oh, that's easy.
She's in a Roger Corman film called Galaxy of Terror. She was in David Lynch's Wild at Heart. She was also in Twin Peaks and its prequel film Fire Walk with Me. She's in the American version of The Grudge.
If we haven't said on this show before, rest in peace, David Lynch.
Absolutely. Also worked with Lynch on Inland Empire, and she was in the Robert Downey Jr. film The Judge.
This is one of the kills, and you pointed it out in the rewatch, and I watched through the house, the Horror Nights house of Chucky that was not this last year, but the previous, which mixed reviews, but it's very good at references. And the next kill is one of the references in that house where the kind of manager of this foster home, he jumps on her and fucking gets her in the chest, and she falls backwards and lands on the copy machine, and it starts making copies.
Right. What's funny is that when Chucky calls the home from the car phone earlier, he talks to Grace.
Yeah.
And she's using the copier in that scene.
Oh, shit.
So.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That's really good.
I noticed that on the last rewatch, too. I was really trying to look out for things like that I had missed, if there was any setups with payoffs later.
And this is why this show works, I think. Our show is that you have an eye for this stuff. You look for this stuff. I pull stuff from other things I've seen because I only have, limited experience with this stuff. But really what it is that you have an eye for detail, and I'm kind of funny. And that's the show, folks.
That's the show. Andy again sneaks out of a window, this time at knife point from Chucky, and they hop in the back of a newspaper van.
Yep.
Kyle follows in her car, and he almost does the chant there.
The Dembala chant, yeah.
And she gets the attention of the driver of that van. Chucky and Andy get away, and they just happen to stop right next door to the Play Pals toy factory.
Which in this scene is great. It's like Frankenstein's castle. It's shown from this low end perspective. So it's like forced perspective. It looks huge and it's dark gray skies. And it's really kind of unnerving.
Yeah.
Because the last time you see it is like bright of day. Yeah.
And it makes me think, this is a bit of a stretch, but it makes me think of a bit of the Silver Shamrocks factory in Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. And then I didn't mention it before, but anytime that you see Andy and them walking around outside of the Simpson home, those streets look like Haddonfield. They look like the streets that Laurie Strode lives on.
Yeah. In Southern California.
Right. So they make it inside the factory.
This is very reminiscent to me of the first movie because as they go into the factory, clearly they didn't want to build a set that was like, oh, this is clearly a lived-in working Good Guy Dolls factory. So the way they got around that was they printed the Good Guys doll box like 1,000 times and they built like walls of them.
Yeah.
That they just shoot the entrance of. It's like, oh, look, this lined with these boxes of Good Guy dolls. But it works.
Yeah. And it creates like a labyrinth for them to kind of run around and get lost in.
And per this movie, the layout of this factory and the way it works makes zero fucking sense. It's like, you ever see those videos of like, they're like mountainside roller coasters where they build like tracks on a mountain so that it uses the gravity of the slope of the mountain to create a sort of coaster.
Yeah, and you ride on a little sled.
Yeah, that's what this factory reminds me of. It's like weird hills and bumps and valleys that go into weird machines. And it's like, this is not what factories fucking look like, but it's whimsical.
Yeah.
Enough that like, it's very Tim Burton-y. You're just kind of, oh, whoa, this is weird.
You ever seen the Robin Williams film Toys?
No.
It reminds me of that because it's another big, like, kind of Willy Wonka-esque toy factory.
Okay.
Really, really cool film.
Yeah.
Chucky, he knocks out Andy and tries the chant. He completes the chant, actually. The storm, just like in the first movie, the storm clouds gather and everything. And then he gets done and Andy opens his eyes.
And for just that second, it's a good fake out.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, shit, did that work?
And, of course, it didn't. Because we've got what, 4 more films in this series. So Chucky is very upset that he's stuck he must have stayed in this body for too long.
Yeah, he's now stuck. The doll is now human.
Yeah. And Kyle has climbed up on a bunch of those stacks of good guy dolls and is knocking them over onto Chucky. She and Andy run away, but it's like through the maze of this, and that's very much, and this is purposefully very much like the end of The Shining, as Wendy and Danny are running through the maze in the snow, almost identical, like the way that the camera's following them behind, following along behind them, and they stop and they pause and they turn, and it's like it's amazing. They climb up this set of like rollers that the finished dolls are coming down on to the conveyor belt. And, you get this back and forth of them climbing, and Andy slides down, and then Chucky pops up and he chases him up, and Kyle is able to close down this like grate onto Chucky's hand.
And it's weird because so you can't show the teacher get beaten to death with a measuring stick, but you can show Chucky having to like rip his arm, like in
127 hours.
Well, I was going to say the 2013 Evil Dead movie.
Yeah.
Where the Jeep has fallen on Mia's arm and she has to yank her arm out from under it.
You're right. Let's go with a horror film reference.
It's 127 hours is terrifying because it is long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you imagine making a movie that lasts 127 hours?
I can, because they didn't.
But yeah, he tears his arm away from this thing, pinning it to the ground, and it is foul.
Yeah.
Tendons tear and snap his like, he's got clearly skin and it's like it's ripping and it's gross.
Well, and it's this cool like juxtaposition from the beginning of the film because we literally watched his body be put together. Right.
And now he's kind of having to dismantle it. And then he's got that knife that he's been carrying around, and he breaks the handle off.
Right.
For those of you who don't know, I don't know why I know this, but the part of the knife, the metal of the knife that goes into the handle is called the tang. That piece is called the tang. And he takes the tang of that knife and shoves it into the fucking bloody stomach. He's like screaming. He didn't need to do that.
No, but
again,
that way it frees up his good hand, his only hand at this point.
For choking.
Yeah.
He's got a hand for choking.
Yeah.
And then a knife stump for stabbing.
Kyle and Andy have made it over into the other side of the factory where the dolls are actually being made.
Yes.
And that's where we see a bunch of these like, machinery that doesn't necessarily make sense, and dolls are like tumbling down slides and
also it's another trope in a movie that I don't like. I said episodes ago that I would start to point these out.
Yeah.
Here's a trope that I don't like in movies is that factories have levels of redundancy in them to prevent small mistakes from backing up the factory line. So I hate it when it's like, oops, I knocked a thing over. And now all of these fucking good guy dolls, there's like piles of them because the machine is spitting them out onto like nothing. And it's like, factories aren't like that. But again, that's not important.
Well, and there's like one guy who's working said factory. So when like the alarm goes off of, there's a problem, then he picks up his little tool case and he goes out there.
And then he dies so horrly.
Yeah.
And it's
by
amazing.
horribly, you mean amazing.
Yeah. Chucky,
so Kyle and Andy have crawled through underneath the eyeball machine that inserts the eyes
eyeball
into the dolls.
putter inner is the technical term.
I think it's written there somewhere. And so all the other dolls that they've kind of knocked in place have all just been catching there. And so the guy goes in there and he moves all those dolls out of the way, and he's like fixing that machine. But in order to do so, he's like laying down underneath it. He finishes that job, and whenever he sits back up, Chucky like stabs him and he falls back, and then the machine
puts doll eyes, the Crypt Keeper's eyes, right into that man's fucking head. And then it's this excellent shot of it is his face with these big, like, because in the opening sequence when Chucky is being assembled, it shows that the eyes are like the circles, but then it's the mechanism under it that like allows them to turn and look. And so it's like a little like mechanical stalk that almost looks like your ocular like veins and nerves, but it's all white plastic. And he's got those things just stuck out. So it's these big bug eyes and it's blood pouring out of them. And it's creepy looking.
It's a great effect.
Yeah. And of course, Chucky's laughing his fucking ass off.
Oh, he's loving it. This is where we really get like Chucky's maniacal high-pitched laugh.
Which becomes a huge staple.
Yeah, it's really set in stone in this movie.
I would say that the three staples are that, his crazy fucking laugh. I would say it's the fucking chant. And then don't fuck with the Chuck. Those are the things that I think of when I think of Chucky.
Yeah. Chucky, they're trying to get out of an exit at one point, and that doesn't work. They bump into this giant tank that has, in giant letters, overflow release valve.
Great.
And some kind of acid is like dripping out of a vent from it. And Chucky comes down on one of the conveyor belts, and they use like the machine that inserts the hair into the doll to like pin him to
They like stitch his leg to the machinery with hair, like doll hair.
Yeah.
And that's by the way, that is stuck to him for the rest of, like, while he is still clothed and not burnt or melted, that hair is on him the rest of the movie, which makes sense. That's like a no-brainer, but a lot of movies skip details like that.
Right.
Like they shoot out of order, or it's just those things where that wouldn't make it. But it feels like Don Mancini is like one of those creators that we love, where it's like, oh no, you're so detail oriented that none of this stuff is going to pass you by.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah. They, have figured out how to use the machinery enough to hit a button that sends him in reverse to go back up into this tall machine that we have watched, where these mechanical arms grab the arms and legs of the good guy dolls and bring them inside and stick them in the doll bodies, we assume.
Now, what I will say is that this makes zero sense because in the beginning we watched them, they literally have portholes in the torsos, and then the arms have pegs that go into the holes. And then this machine seems to like graft them, like melt them or something.
Yeah.
Because out from that box, and this is from earlier, I said, this is another magic card that they released in that set of magic cards that are Chucky based. It is the artwork of the mass of pieces of Chucky dolls all put onto that one little Chucky body that has rolled out. That's the art on the magic card.
It looks a bit like the blobite at the end of Evil Dead Rise.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good, I forgot that that's what we called it.
Yeah.
Good job.
That's our term.
But so that's 2 magic cards down. And it is we are made to believe Chucky has been killed. He's screaming in the machine when that happens. It rolls out, covered in body parts. It's like, oh, okay, he's dead.
And so they're going to get away.
Yeah.
And that's when I believe the strung up body of that worker, that factory worker, swings down, having strung up by Chucky.
Yeah.
And it knocks Kyle out and up onto the conveyor belt as it's slowly rising into that machine.
Right.
And Chucky wheels himself out on this little like foot cart.
Yeah. Like
He
a
has-
mechanic's cart. Yeah.
He has no legs.
No.
And he is just like wheeling himself along at Andy.
So again, poor Chucky. Now, what I will say is that Chucky has a tenacity and ambition that is remarkable. And I would say most people should strive for it. Are you feeling low? Are you feeling like you can't get out of bed today? Are you listening to podcasts because the world is crazy and maybe you're a little depressed? Be like Chucky. Chucky lost his hand and his legs, but he found a way to work. And his way to work, what his work is murdering a child.
Yeah. He threatens to cut off Andy's legs,
Good.
I guess, so that they could be, legless friends till the end.
Well, no, he's going to take Andy's legs and use them.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. He'll just graft them right on.
Yep. Put him in the machine.
And he stabs at Andy, and his knife hand now gets stuck in a piece of the machinery. And Andy pulls the big release valve, and it dumps that acid. Which what would that acid be there for?
So I don't think it's acid.
Okay.
To me, it looked like melted plastic, like hot, like a liquid plastic, like a slush plastic. There's a thing that they use in when you're like in SFX that my brother Alistair taught me, which is you use this like a liquid plastic. And you take a mold of something, and with that hollow mold, you take that liquid plastic, you put it into, it's called slush casting. You take the liquid plastic, you put it into the hollow mold, and you literally in your hands spin it. And so that plastic will coat the inside, and then you peel away the mold, and you've got a plastic thing. So it may be how they create the arms or whatever, but I think they keep it hot to keep it liquid. and that melted plastic pours on him and begins to melt his plastic pieces.
That makes
Well,
sense.
at that point, I guess he's flesh and blood. But
Yeah.
if you got fucking melted plastic poured on you, it would burn like crazy.
It makes me think of the dip at the end of Who Framed Roger Rabbit
Fair enough, yeah.
when they spray Doctor whatever his name is. Anyway,
To me, it reminds me of Game of Thrones. Daenerys's brother. Oh God, I can't remember his name. Doesn't matter. Khal Drogo, speaking English for the first time in the series, says "crown for a king" and pours liquid gold all over his head.
Yeah,
Reminds me of that
Okay. We think that Chucky is defeated.
for the second time.
He's not. He pops back up. Andy has rescued Kyle at this point. This is the part where I think that this is the moment of Andy realizing there is no one else. I have to stand up for myself. I have to, I can only rely on myself for this. The lesson that Kyle taught him earlier. He wakes her up, rescues her from being, sent up into this machine. They again look like they're going to get away. Chucky pops up once again. And this time there's been this hose that's like been cut. And so it's like, shooting air out of it. And so she grabs that, shoves it into Chucky's mouth. His head then expands, filling with air until it explodes, leaving just his melted corpse of a body.
Which reminded me of the, God, I can't remember the character's name, but in Monty Python, it's just a wafer thin mint. And he eats it, and then he explodes.
Oh, yeah.
That's what that reminded me of.
And so finally, they are able to leave the factory. And it's basically, they have a little moment of like, well, where are we going to go now? Well, I don't know. And then the credits start rolling.
Right.
There is nothing left to this movie. There's no
Well, and what I'll say is that part of the creativity, I think, of Child's Play 2 is that Child's Play 1 ends with no room for a sequel. Chucky has been burnt to fucking ashes. And then it's like, oh my God, his body's gone. Where is it? And then he attacks people and then it gets shot up and fucking it's destroyed. And so,
And they do the thing that that John told them to do, which was you have to shoot it through the heart.
right. And it's blood's all over the wall. And it's like, okay, it's fucking dead. And so there's no room to continue. And then this one, they literally filled him with air until he popped like a grape. He's gone. He's dead. And they're off on their own and they do whatever. It's the creativity of going, it's the creativity of going, we didn't leave ourselves an obvious path for a sequel. So how do we make one? And that I think is more respectful than is gone. No, I'm kidding. Halloween's a perfect movie. But the point is I really appreciate the writing them out of the corner that they keep doing. Now, do they do that in 3? We don't know yet.
Yeah.
We'll have to find out.
We're going to revisit that one. I don't look as forward to that one.
No.
But I was pleasantly surprised with this one, which leads us to, yes, I would recommend this one.
I'd absolutely recommend this one. I would recommend this one. And if asked, well, do I need to watch the first one? No.
No. Everything that you need to know is explained within the first, 5-6 minutes.
Yeah.
Those opening scenes, they really explain all the major beats of what happened last time. This takes place 2 years after that, and let's keep on trucking.
The way I used to describe the original Child's Plays, 1, 2, 3, were they were the completionists' achievements to then say you watched the whole series, but you really you're just, oh my God, come on, let's get to Bride. Because Bride of Chucky is great, and it takes the series a completely different direction, and it's very fun and engaging. But now, having rewatched 2, I would say, because I rewatched 1, and I thought the same thing. I like this movie. It's fundamentally great. It's fundamentally good, and it does what it does well, and it's competent. But it's just we get it. You get it in the first 5 minutes, and then it takes more than an hour to get through. And it's like, come on, man. This one is a lot of fun. It is fun. It is silly. There are good, effective horror moments. I don't think the horror holds up to today's standards, but I think the movie itself holds up because it is engaging. It's fun the whole time. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this one. I would say that 1 you watch to get to 2, and then 3 you watch to get to Bride.
Yeah. On these rewatches, because I didn't remember a whole lot from 2.
Yeah, almost nothing.
And That was just, from watching it for the first time a couple years ago. But then I don't know. I would say, I think I said this at the beginning, I would put this very, very close to what Child's Play is to me.
Yeah.
I think Child's Play 1 may be a little more suspenseful at times.
Sure.
This one does have its moments, but we don't necessarily need those moments as much in this one because we know what's going on. We as the audience knows what's going on. So we can get to it a lot faster.
I think that Child's Play 1, the suspense is good. And it's effective because you have no idea what they're going to do in 1. The first time you're watching it, you have no idea how he's going to be revealed, to whom he is going to be revealed. When he is revealed, how is he going to kill people? Does he ever get back into a body? What is that going to be like? You have no idea what they're going to do. By 2, you get it. You understand the formula.
Yeah. And you get to see Chucky do Chucky things.
Yeah. He's going to pretend to be a doll, and then he's going to pop out and he's going to murder old people. That's what he does. And he's good at it. One last thing before we go, a bit of kind of housekeeping for our audience. We have been absolutely floored and touched by the response that we've gotten for this show. Friends of ours, people we've never met. We've gotten a lot of streams, a lot of downloads. It means a lot. Thank you for listening. Please keep listening. Recommend to friends, all the like and subscribe YouTube channel bullshit. Thank you. What I will say is that, world's a crazy place now. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely insane. A lot of people are scared. It's a scary time. Anytime that something is unprecedented, people get scared. Recently, there's been a lot of talk about, antipsychotics or antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication. Mental health is starting to kind of get attacked. So what I will say is that if the show has helped you in any way feel happy or better, we appreciate that. If you need, if you would like to reach out, we are always available. We say it in our outro. We have an email address. Feel free to reach out to us if you have questions or if you just want to talk. You can text us per links in our descriptions and whatnot. We are always available. You can find us on every social media platform. We do answer direct messages and whatnot. But reach out if you want to talk to us, because if you want to talk to us because you like horror, great. If you want to reach out to us because this is a part of your life where you need to speak to somebody and you like us because we're hosts of a show that you listen to, or if you know us personally, reach out to us. But I always reach out to the audience in silly ways to promote Tubi or whatever. But this, reading the news anymore is stressful. So if we can help you beyond talking about fucking Child's Play 2, let us help you. I think Derek and I are both committed to being helpful to the communities that we are a part of.
Absolutely.
And in this outreach, it's people that like horror, people that like podcasts, and people that fucking love Tubi. Thanks for tuning into the Third Channel Podcast. Please, if you have the time, rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast apps.
You can follow us on social media at Third Channel Podcast, and you can find me online at @DRosenberg.
You can also reach out to us at thirdchannelpodcast@gmail.com, where we check every message, we swear. Third Channel is hosted by PJ Minette
and Derek Rosenberg. Theme song and audio engineering by Fly Guy Ty.
The logo designed by Belle DeVelco.
Episode artwork by Nathan Walkington.
Keep it tuned right here to the Third Channel for all things horror. And remember, don't touch that dial.
Egg salad and eggs.